Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a geopolitical crisis that is developing at absolute breakneck speed, one that genuinely threatens to disrupt global trade and security. We're going to break down the sudden collapse of the US-Iran ceasefire, and we'll examine the urgent, incredibly high-stakes diplomatic interventions by Pakistan and Qatar as they scramble to prevent a massive regional escalation. If you want to understand exactly how a carefully negotiated peace unraveled in a matter of weeks and who is trying to put the pieces back together, you are definitely in the right place.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover the broken ceasefire, defining the Islamabad MOU, escalation and ultimatum, Pakistan stepping in, Qatar's diplomatic role, and finally ask if peace can actually be salvaged.
All right, Part 1, the broken ceasefire. Just look at how incredibly compressed this timeline is. On June 18th, a major peace framework is signed, right? 3 days later, high-level technical talks kick off in Switzerland. But by July 10th, the region is suddenly teetering on the brink of a much broader conflict, prompting these frantic late-night emergency meetings in Pakistan. To put that into perspective, treaties like this usually take months or even years to unravel. This one, it completely fell apart in just 22 days.
Moving to Part 2, defining the Islamabad MOU. Before we go further, the crucial point to understand here is that the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding wasn't just some brief, temporary pause in fighting. It was an ambitious ceasefire agreement signed by the US and Iran, specifically designed to restore lasting peace in West Asia. And crucially, it was mediated by Pakistan and Qatar. This was intended to be an enduring framework meant to promote mutual understanding, respect, and shared prosperity across the whole region. It was a massive diplomatic heavy lift, and now, well, it's hanging by a thread.
Let's get into Part 3, escalation and ultimatum.
Right now, we are seeing a really stark contrast in the escalating rhetoric from both sides. On one hand, the United States is issuing strict ultimatums, demanding an immediate stop to attacks in the Strait of Hormuz and officially declaring the ceasefire completely over. On the other hand, Iran is warning of reciprocal actions and vowing retaliation, particularly following the killing of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in recent strikes. Both sides are exchanging severe direct warnings and rapidly moving away from the negotiating table, straight toward military readiness.
The reality on the ground is grim. We are basically looking at a shattered peace bridge. This rapid exchange of military threats, combined with the immense emotional and political fallout from the Supreme Leader's funeral in Iran, completely wiped out the diplomatic progress established just a few weeks prior. The environment violently shifted from technical talks in Switzerland directly into attacks on rival targets.
Which brings us to Part 4. Pakistan steps in.
Realizing just how incredibly high the stakes were getting, regional neighbors knew they had to intervene structurally before things spiraled totally out of control. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif immediately initiated separate late-night talks, urging parties to exercise restraint and refrain from any action that could jeopardize the hard-earned peace gains. He's deliberately using the slow, methodical language of diplomacy here to try and cool down that incredibly heated rhetoric we were just talking about, basically reminding everyone of how hard it was to get the Islamabad MOU signed in the very first place.
And importantly, Iran actually showed receptiveness to this. President Masoud Pezeshkian explicitly thanked Pakistan for its constructive support and sincere efforts for regional stability. He also went out of his way to thank the Pakistani leadership for attending Ayatollah Khamenei's funeral. That's a huge signal that diplomatic channels of respect are still open despite the surrounding chaos.
Now, we really need to realize how deep this mediation runs. It wasn't just a couple of quick phone calls. PM Sharif held urgent talks with both Iranian and Qatari leaders, while top Pakistani officials, literally the Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar and Field Marshal Asim Munir, physically attended the Supreme Leader's funeral. They also pledged to speed up bilateral cooperation decisions that were made during President Pezeshkian's visit to Islamabad just the month before. They are leaning heavily into their existing relationships to try and anchor this whole situation.
On to Part 5, Qatar's diplomatic role. Because Pakistan isn't acting alone here. Qatar has taken on a remarkably complex mediation agenda. As co-mediators, they were already heavily involved in those high-level technical talks at Bergenstock in Switzerland. But now, they're simultaneously trying to manage the diplomatic fallout from the recent attacks, fighting tooth and nail to sustain any form of dialogue despite the broken ceasefire, and pushing to uphold the original commitments of the MOU. During a call with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, PM Sharif made sure to highlight Qatar's steadfast support. They are truly juggling some incredibly complex moving parts behind the scenes right now.
Really, the entire goal of the Pakistani and Qatari interventions boils down to this one simple yet crucial idea. Sustained diplomatic engagement simply has to outpace military retaliation. Both leaders emphasized in their talks that the absolute only path out of this crisis is for all parties to strictly adhere to the commitments they already made under the peace memorandum. It is quite literally a race against time between negotiators and military commanders.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 6. Can peace be salvaged? To get these derailed negotiations back on track, the mediators are pushing a very strict three-step pathway. First, acknowledge the MOU violations. Second, immediately exercise restraint to preserve whatever peace gains are actually left. And third, get back to the technical framework at Bergenstock. It's a logical progression. It's a clear, actionable game plan. But man, it is incredibly difficult to execute when tensions are running this high.
And all of this leaves us pondering one really critical final thought. Will the structured, careful interventions of regional neighbors like Pakistan and Qatar truly be enough to salvage peace before the region crosses a point of no return? Can diplomacy actually outpace the loaded missiles currently dominating our headlines? It's honestly the most vital question in international relations right now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.